Welcome to B Says. So, how does one report a crime? Usually, if you're reporting a crime, you call, report it. You're saying things like, hey, this is what's happened, this is what I saw, and I need to report it. So, in November of last year, 2023, I realized that I had observed IDOC kill somebody. Not just that, but it was something that occurred that I actually took steps on my own to try to stop it, and was told directly and specifically by IDOC to stop what I was doing. What was I doing? I was trying to get him medical care and treatment. So I realized, after talking to some people about my time at IDOC, that I needed to report this. So I called the Ada County Sheriff's Office. That's who I believed was taking those type of reports. But it turns out that it's now Idaho State Police. So for those of you who wish to report anything around Idaho Department of Corrections, that would be Idaho State Police. So I called the non-emergency number and made a report, letting them know that what I saw and what occurred, and they said, okay, we'll take your information and we'll have somebody call you back in 24 hours. Now, a murder, even one that happened back in 2015, that's still a murder. There's no time limit on reporting this. If you know that happened, you have evidence, you can guide them to medical records, you have what you need. So I waited because they said they would call me, and Idaho State Police never did call me back. So I let the days pass, and after a few days, I then called again. And they gave me the same song and dance. Somebody would call me back, blah, 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 and they're about ready to give me the blow off once again. When I stopped them and said, hey, I already called a few days ago, and I've never received a phone call back. So just in this type of information, this is kind of a substantial piece. And maybe I'm misinformed on how, police work actually works, but you would think that they'd be like, oh, okay, we want to actually talk to you. But so anyway, the dispatcher, they paused. I don't know if they were like talking to somebody on the other line, but eventually they put me through to somebody and I started talking. And I got the runaround again, but I got a number and I got an email. And so I waited again. And once again, they did not call me back. So you can see kind of where this is going. So I write one email and I make another phone call. And I finally do get somebody, and I'm trying to give them information, and it's like I am somehow inconveniencing them with what I'm telling them. When the events occurred, what I observed, where the information would be, everything is documented because that's how it works in prison. It's all there. All you got to do is a little bit of investigation. Well, Idaho State Police did not want to do that. So later, when I received an email which included correspondence from a Captain Matthew Sly, he basically said that Idaho State Police cannot act on suspicions of a crime, which is interesting because they do all the time, but okay. And he essentially directed in his email that they were to get rid of me. So within that email, he also noted that I'd been emailing HQ, but the reality was I sent one email, and after having 2 phone calls unreturned, I made one more attempt. So that's how it went for me trying to report a crime fairly recently. And so some other events occurred, and I was kind of compelled to call the Special Investigations Unit of IDOC. As you are probably aware, there have been an escape. There's actually been a few escapes, but this one particular escape resulted in the death of 2 innocent men. And the escape happened at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, often called MAX, and also was tied together with the denial of medical treatment of an offender. And then there's also information which I wanted to include, which involved assaults, rapes of both men and women within IDOC. So my voicemail was a little long-winded, but they actually called me back, unlike ISP. So they called me back within 24 hours, and I spoke with an investigator, Sarah. And as I began to talk to her, it turned fairly unpleasant very quickly and unprofessional. She acted like she could not hear me at first, which everybody who's watching this knows with the way telephones are now, you just turn up the volume. It's not that big of a deal. So that was the first thing. So the second thing, as I was continuing to talk and was trying to provide the information, every time I talked, she would start talking over me and interrupting me. So this continued over and over and over to the point where I had to stop talking. And it's like, look, I would like to talk, but if I'm talking, I need you to listen. And unprompted, the investigator Sarah, started bringing up my termination within IDOC, which I thought was odd, and then said something about me being part of some conspiracy, which was also very strange. I still don't understand that. So it was all kind of off-putting, to say the least. Additionally, as we were talking, she was continuing to get more and more upset with me. She said I was only talking about things that were in the paper, but it should be noted again that every time I tried to talk, she would interrupt me. So I had literally had said nothing to her at that point because she stopped me every single time. So I was like, look, I'm trying to provide you with some information, and you're not even letting me talk. And I noted that right now it seems that you are frustrated, and that's me talking about Investigator Sarah, and somehow you're angry at me, and I am just trying to provide you with information. And she goes, well, you're not providing me with any new information. I was like, this is true because you haven't let me talk. So are you going to let me talk? So are you going to be upset and let me talk, or are you going to continue to interrupt me? She finally said she would let me talk, and we started talking a little bit more. And I told her straight up, if you're unable to have this conversation, because I know it is upsetting, then you need to pass this phone call off to somebody who can talk to me. Right now, that does not seem to be you. So she agreed that she would be able to do it. And as I began, lasted maybe 30 seconds. And again, started talking over me, started interrupting me. And at this point, I was just done with it because she was doing the same thing that I had just barely told her, hey, I'm trying to get this out to you, but you have to listen. I said, you're going to have to shut up and listen. Of course, she didn't like that and says, well, I'm going to end the call. And so she did. So I called back and I talked to somebody else who is able to listen, asked a lot of questions, allowed me to respond, and they learned that I had information to provide that was not included in the newspaper. Information that they maybe knew about, maybe did not know about, but that's the thing when it comes to investigating a crime. You gather all the information and you start putting the pieces together. The more angles you have, the more fuller the picture is, and you start to see what the true narrative is. Investigator Sarah had no intention of letting me give her any information. In fact, it seemed like that was her goal, to not listen. So imagine for a moment that you're somebody who's been in prison and you have multiple felonies and you yourself are trying to report a crime. How do you think that's going to go? So I just went through how it went for me. I got accused of harassing ISP and making multiple phone calls when I just followed up on phone calls that were never returned. I got accused of making stuff up by investigator Sarah, and I got accused of being a conspiracy theorist. Who am I? So everything that I've been bringing forward throughout this channel has been backed by medical records, IRs, information reports, notes, you name it. So a normal person just trying to report a crime, rape, assault, extortion, you would think it would be fairly easy. But if you are not a normal person, it gets extremely difficult, and difficult to an extremely high level. So the arm of investigations of Idaho State Police and the Special Investigations Unit are both actively trying to suppress any sort of information that comes forward. Idaho crimes will have to be investigated by outside agencies. I've also brought up multiple subjects and topics to the FBI. I told them that more people were going to die at the hands of IDOC. and they have. And it's not just these deaths, but there are assaults and rapes that are also tied to IDOC. So if you think you're a criminal or a felon and you're going to be able to report a crime, good luck with that. Do you believe even for a second that's going to be possible? The bar that offenders who have to cross, that bar that they have to cross, is a huge bar, and everybody that is taking that information, they're incentivized to not believe you. It is especially dangerous for those who are employed. It's especially dangerous to the offender when they are giving this information to law enforcement who are actively actually committing these offenses. Offenses which include rape, assault, extortion, denial of basic human rights, and more. And these are criminals that they are exploiting. So let me just ask you for a moment and try to put together the fact that those who imprison are innocent. They are in prison to do their time. They're not there to do crimes. They're not there to be a criminal. They're only there to do nothing but serve their time so they can be released back into public as a whole human being. When I saw firsthand why IDOC was complicit, that IDOC was complicit in denying people their basic human rights, and then they would call the people in prison criminals, that's really not true. Our enforcement arm is actively breaking the law and doing so on the taxpayer's dime. The next time you wonder why people are afraid to speak up, this is why. My voice was intentionally silenced by IDOC, and they took extreme steps to harm and injure me. Now imagine just what they can do to someone whose literal life is in their hands. Are you starting to see? This is B Says. Until next time, be safe.